Hey guys, we have a 2023 Ski Doo Expedition LE super wide that needs to have a bunch of accessories installed. We have a belly pan, ski skins, cargo box, the wraparound front heavy duty bumper, and the heavy duty rear bumper with hitches for the front and back. Thanks for stopping by. We're on to the next step with our accessory installation on the 2023 Ski Doo Expedition super wide. And today we're going to be putting on the belly pan. This one promises to be a little bit more involved than the cargo box or the rear bumper because we've got to dismantle a good amount of the bodywork on the front to get at everything. You can see we've got some holes that are going to have to be drilled through. 4 holes in the front, holes for rivets here, and then a number of fasteners up through the belly. It's been my experience with installing accessories on BRP products that the installation instructions look really daunting when you first start looking at them, but when you start tearing stuff apart and doing the installation, things go fairly smooth. So I'm hoping we're going to have the same thing happen here. Instructions for these installations are available from www.instructions.brp.com, and you'll need the kit number for whatever product you're installing. One thing to keep in mind if you're doing this in years future, the markings on the plastic here that you're supposed to use for drilling the holes are not really obvious, and if this thing gets bounced off a stump or two, they may get scuffed off. There's a mark right here. I don't know if it shows up on camera or not. Right there, there's a little, it looks like a little O that is cast out of the surface of the existing belly pan, and if you bang that off of a rock or a stump at some point, it may easily get knocked off of there. Well, let's get started. First thing we need to do is pull the windshield off of here. Windshield is held on by grommets on either side. And then we slide it forward. You want to be careful to set this someplace safe so that it doesn't get damaged. Now we pull off the side panels. We've got some screws that need to come out now. Get the top of the glove box off. They look like a T25. And we've got 2 more screws on the underside here. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but right in under here is another screw. We've got to get out of there. Now we've got a hose clamp on the airbox we need to pull out of there, and the whole top of this should come off. We'll put the screws in the glove box so they don't get lost. It's hard to see, but we've got our hose clamp for the airbox is right here. Okay, that should have our airbox backed off. We've got our glove box that needs to be removed. And we've got our headlight wiring harness. On the top here is a release tab. It doesn't really move a whole lot, but give it a little wiggle and the headlight wiring harness pops off. Now this whole assembly gets draped up and hooked on the handlebars. Got the front off, and back's just being a little bit grumpy. And now the airbox. There's our front bodywork off. Next item they say to take out is the exhaust system. I've got one spring off already. I got kind of a homemade spring puller here. Hook on, pull on the spring, get it off. We've got one, looks like a 10 mil bolt, well, 10 mil head on the bolt, and a couple of rubber grommets down on the bottom, and we should be able to lift this out of here. Now we pull the muffler back and lift it up and out. It does have a little bit of weight to it. We hoist that out of there. One thing we want to be careful of is that we don't damage this carbon seal on the exhaust. We've got our skid plate kind of stuck in here. We do need to we do need to drill out these front 2 holes, and then we can start getting things up into place. One thing that we do need to be very careful of before we start drilling anything though is our radiator is right here in behind where we're going to be drilling. We need to be careful that we don't stick the drill bit in too far. There is enough space in between the bodywork and the radiator that we shouldn't have to be super concerned that we're going to punch through. Just something we need to be aware of. Looking at this a little bit closer, there's really only one bolt that is holding the rad in place, and then we've got our wire and a couple of flexible cooling hoses. I think we can probably just kind of lift it up out of the way. That gives us good access to the backside for putting washers on the backside of the rivets. Before we get too carried away installing the belly pan, there's a couple little modifications we need to make here. You'll see how we've got a routed out slot on this corner of the belly pan. Likewise, we've got another one on this corner, and the 2 pans that go underneath the running boards and extend back onto the driver's feet also have notches that need to be taken out of them. And if you weren't installing the wraparound bumper that we plan on doing on this machine, you wouldn't have to worry about taking that out. However, because that's the next step in our accessory installs, we need to take these notches out. Now this, as you can see, is pretty thick plastic, and it is cut about halfway through. However, that is still pretty heavy duty stuff. We're going to take it to a heated shop where we can warm things up with a heat gun and cut it out with a utility knife, but we're not going to be able to record there. So I'll be back in a little bit when we've got these notched out, and we'll continue on with the installation. We got the notches taken out of here, and what we ended up doing was taking a utility knife, heating the blade up so that it was red hot, and then using that to slice it out. Of course, that kind of made a rough edge, and we cleaned it up with a deburring tool and a file, and then just kind of kissed it with a propane torch just to seal up the edge and make it look fairly decent. Is it as neat as the factory edge? No, but it's not bad. We've got the machine flipped up on its side here. The instructions say to remove 4 fasteners. What they don't tell you is that the 4 fasteners are rivets. We've got one here, and we've got one here, and we've got 2 in the same locations on the other side, and the belly pan will attach to those rivet holes. After drilling the rivets out on the other side, we figured out how come they mentioned fasteners in the manual instead of calling them rivets, because over on this side we've got 2 Torx head screws that we need to pull out of there. And I have to say the Torx head screws come out much easier than the rivets did on the other side. Right here and right here are the marks that we're supposed to drill out for our front rivets. Back on the side, there's our other mark. But I think what I would like to do is start the skid plate on the front 2 holes, get it held up in place where it needs to be, and then we can do a final locate on these marks, because they're not very good mark. They're kind of almost like a dash, would be a good description. We want them to line up in the hole. Back at it, day 2 of installing accessories on this machine, and we've kind of got to rejigger how we're doing things. We've encountered a little problem in that the belly pan has a tendency to sag in the middle, so the distance between the top and the bottom gets short, the distance between the front and the back gets short. So we're kind of going to do a wraparound. I don't know whether it's framed up here, but we've got a bolt started. I've got a rivet started in the hole. And we tried pulling that with a hand riveter last night, and it just wasn't happening. So I brought out the fancy Milwaukee M12 electric riveter. Since we're going up into, I don't know if it's stainless steel or aluminum, I don't think we need washers on the back side of the rivets. That, and it would be next to impossible to get in there anyways, because that's right underneath the engine. But let's push this up in place, put a little bit of pressure on the rivet, and snap. Definitely is a much easier way to pull these rivets. Now we've got this rivet here and this one over here. I don't know if those are framed up or not, but they will require washers on the back side, so I think we'll do those from the other side. I'm going to see if I can get these 2 rivets in place. I tell you, there's no question about those being the way to pull those rivets. We've got our other bolt we need to get restarted here. Progress has been made. Well, we got it flipped up. This is the port that we would open up 2 screws to get at the bottom of the engine for changing the oil, or you can use an oil sucker like I do on my machine to pull the oil up the top so you don't have to take any of this apart. We've reached a point where we have to do a little bit of thinking, planning ahead as we go forward with the belly pan installation. You can see we've got some parts here, and these have to get mounted on the outside of the belly pan. Inside we have these 2 screws here that need to get removed that are the anchor points for the parts that I just showed you on the outside of the machine. And then we need to drill back through the belly pan to mount those. This is something that's much easier to do while the belly pan is half installed, rather than having to fight with the belly pan once it's completely set up. Since we don't have the belly pan completely mounted yet, I'm able to hinge it down. Remove those. Now we've got to get it up in place. We've got a hole drilled for the one of the front rivets. I'm not going to rivet it yet, but I am just going to put a screw in there. So this screw is used elsewhere in the belly pan assembly, but it is perfect. It fits perfectly into the drilled plastic, kind of cuts its own hole as it goes in, and works good as a temporary fastener. Now that our belly pan is up in place, we can take a drill and we will back drill through the riv nuts that are in here. Careful not to chew up the threads, so we want to go with a fairly small drill bit just to mark the location of where those holes are going to have to come through on the belly pan to work with the rest of the armor that we have to go on here. A 3/16 drill bit seems to fit just about perfect back through these riv nuts, so we'll use that. That gives us our holes to work with on the outside of the belly pan, perfectly aligned with our riv nuts that we have to access. Our reasoning for drilling those holes through the belly pan is we've got the adventure plate, and you'll see it has 2 holes, and we have the front bumper that fits together, something like that. Check out the next video in this series where we do the assembly of the front wraparound bumper, and we use all of these parts. But we definitely had to think about that while we were putting on this belly pan. Now that we've got the front kind of sort of up in place and we've got the back solidly mounted, we're going to go for the we'll call it chipmunk cheeks. There's a hole for a rivet here, and there's a hole for a rivet on the other side. And they don't show actually putting anything in on the other side in the instructions. Seems a little weird. I would think that you'd end up with a bunch of snow getting jammed down in here if it's not solidly mounted. Now, unfortunately, there's no way you guys are going to be able to see in there because I can't see in there, but down the back side of where this rivet is going to go in is the primary clutch coming out of the front of the engine. And it's going to be a little interesting getting a washer on the back side of this rivet. But in the instructions, it very clearly shows putting a rivet and a washer and sandwiching the plastics in between. That way we've got a good solid load spreader for the rivets. Our original plan is to put the rivet in there because I didn't figure it would be easy to get at the back side. And it's so difficult to get in around the primary clutch that I can't even get the washer on the back side of the rivet. However, we've got this shield here that is designed to control a broken belt, I'm guessing. And if we take it out of there, I should be able to get my hand right down on it, and we should be able to put the bolt in that's indicated. I'll retrieve those two bolts out of the bottom here. Definitely do not want to lose those. Here we have the printout of the instructions, and you can see this is the bolt that we're working on right here, and it definitely shows that this is supposed to be a bolt that is the M5 by 25 Torx rather than a rivet. And with that shield out of there, it'd be no problem to get down in with a wrench and be able to tighten this up. And nylock nut. The bolt also has Loctite on it, so kind of a belt and suspenders kind of situation. Put the wrench on the nut. Time to reinstall our little shield that we just removed. I'm going to take a little bit of blue Loctite and apply it to these bolts. Because with this shield sitting right beside the primary clutch, we really don't want it vibrating loose. We're on the right side of the machine here at the, we'll call it chipmunk cheek for lack of a better term. And this isn't mentioned in the instructions anywhere that we need to have a rivet over here. But I think if we don't, we're going to end up with snow and crap packed in around here. We bolted the other side, but we're going to rivet this side. And the reason we're going to rivet this is the exhaust can sits down here, and we don't want to have any interference with the can. We don't want a bolt head wearing into the can or the brackets. Now, one additional step that we have to do is we've got the heat shield, and we're going to be coming through right in this area here with the rivet, and it'll be underneath this padding. So let's get that drilled. We've got a rivet. Put the washer on the inside because we're just doing 2 layers of plastic. And if you look in here, you can see the backside of our rivet. Now that we've got our chipmunk cheeks attached, it's time to get the rest of this front up in place. Normally we would continue on with screwing the front on here, but remember we've got this the adventure plate and front hitch that we're going to be mounting here, and we just kind of pilot drilled those holes. So what I'm going to do is take our screw back out here that we were using for temporary purposes. Drop that down. I'm going to take a larger drill bit and drill those 2 bolt holes out. Just going to leave a little bit of slack around them to allow for any slight misalignment. Back drilling them like we did, they should be perfectly aligned, but things can shift slightly, and a 1/16 of an inch can make a big difference on how easy it is to get things bolted back together again. We're going to take a 5/16 drill bit and open these belly pan holes up. Pull it down away from the machine, so when the plastic pulls the bit through, it doesn't mess up the threads on the riv nut. And that will give us a little bit of slack to play with. We've got 2 more rivets that we need to install here, and one on this side. I haven't drilled those holes out yet. The marks on the side of the cowl were not really clear to exactly where they were supposed to be drilled. I wanted to get everything up in place and use the skid plate as our marker to drill these holes out. That has the front portion of the belly pan riveted into place, riveted and screwed in a few spots. Now we're on to the footrest, the rear portions. Our last parts that we're going to be installing on this as part of this belly pan project are the footwell protectors. It's going to provide some additional protection in around the brake assembly here and the gear case on the other side. The last thing we want to do is jam a rock into the bottom of the gear case and cause issues. This is a metal protector here already, but adding the skid plate on there will be a good addition. We have 2 more rivets on each side that we need to put in that will drill out. Those go into the metal. Then we have 3 holes, 1, 2, 3, that we need to drill up into the footrest and then bolt these in place. 3/16 drill bit. This kind of fits in a little bit behind the belly pan. Now that we've got it mostly in place, we can put those 2 rivets in. To get this held up in place while we put these 2 front rivets in, we're going to drill this middle hole. I'm just going to mark it with the drill, take it down. We are dead center of that little web, exactly where we want to be. The instructions said we needed a slightly larger drill bit, and this is where it's needed because the bolts that we're using are 5 mil and they don't quite fit through a 3/16 hole. Holes need to be slightly larger, and now our bolt slips in there quite nicely. Put a washer on and an eye lock nut. And remember back one of the earlier steps at the beginning of this project, we mentioned notching out these holes in the plastics using a hot knife and cleaning them up with a torch. You can see we've got a couple of mounting holes here, and the wraparound bumper that we'll be doing in a upcoming video mounts to the running board here and goes up around the machine. We'll put our 2 rivets in. And now we have the 2 bolts that go at the back here. 2 screws, a washer and a nut on each of them. And that gets our running board protector installed. Now we got to do the exact same thing over on the other side. I'm not going to record it because you guys don't want to see me doing the same thing all over again. I'll bring you back when we have that done. We've got the belly pan all mounted up as far as we're going to take this. We've got both sides put in. We've got these 4 rivets, 2 on each side that we've done, and we've got everything bolted up. One little thing that you need to keep in mind is there's a bolt that's located in here. There was a little divot on that piece of plastic indicating it needed to be drilled out, and I don't think we've quite got a large enough hole in that, but at least we've got a hole that we can open up with a step drill if we ever have to take it any further. As for reassembly, putting all the bodywork and the exhaust system back on and the belt shield, we're not going to do any of that at this point. The next video that we're going to be doing in this series, we'll be putting the wraparound bumper on, and all of that stuff would have to come back out to do that job anyways. So we're going to end this one here. Thanks a lot for stopping by, checking out the video. Leave me those like things and subscribe, ring the bell icon. Check the link below for merch if you're looking for some Doug's Messy Garage logo type wear, and we'll catch you guys in the next mess. Thanks for watching.